All right, here we go with the Chapter 7 test review. So I'm going to go through and do a couple problems with you right now just to get your brains fresh remembering how to do these problems. If you need more reminders on how to do certain concepts, right, you can always go back and rewatch any of the old videos from previous days in the chapter. Otherwise, really what I'm going to do is just kind of talk through a couple of these questions, right? If you follow the steps that we've written down in your notes already, hopefully you have them written down, right? You would know that the first thing to do on any problem is expand if you need to. Remember, this one is just everything is timesing if we were to read it across. So when I expand that out, it would look like this. There are no powers on the outside of the parentheses, so I can skip that step. There are also no negative exponents, so I can skip that step. Then on this problem, all I would need to do is reorganize. So when I reorganize this, my 4 times my -3 would go out front, big numbers. Then I have an x squared times another x, right? And if it helps to see the x to the 1, we'd put the 1 on it. My y's, I have a 3 power and a 4 power. So a y to the 3rd power and a y to the 4th power. And then I only have the one z, so I can leave that guy at the end, my z to the 3rd. Multiply the big numbers. 4 times -3 is -12. X to the 2nd times an x to the 1st. When it's a multiplication problem with the same basis, we can add those exponents, x to the 3rd. Same thing true for my y's, y to the 7th. And then my z, since there's nothing to combine it with, it's going to just be my z to the 3rd. All right, so the first type of problem we did when we started this chapter was these multiplication properties, right? And how do you do those things to combine them? So when you see a longer problem, right, it's nothing more and just more types of numbers and letters in it, right? But it'd be the same type of question. I'm not going to go through this one all the way through because it is exactly like this. So I just want you to see the difference between problems like these and when we get to problems like these, right? The difference between these problems on this page and the problems on this page is that on this page we've got those powers on the outside, right? I'm going to do the harder one on the bottom this time. So when I do this problem down here, right, the first thing that I like to do is always expand. So I'm going to put in the times sign so I see them better. I know then next I have to deal with these powers on the outside. When I have those powers on the outside, the rule is everything on the inside needs a power, so that one's good. Over here, this one needs a 1 and this one needs a 1. And then, right, my power on the outside multiplies to the powers on the inside. So at first I'd have -2 to the power of 4, because 1 times 4 is 4. I'd have an m to the power of 8, and I'd have an n to the power of 12. Over here, I have that power of 3, right? When I multiply that one through to all of them, I'd have a -1 to the 3rd, an m to the 3rd, and an n to the 6th, right? And then it becomes a problem like kind of on the front. I could reorganize my -2 to the 4th times my -1 to the 3rd first. I can combine my x's or my m's next, my m to the 8th and my m to the 3rd. And then I have my n's at the end, my n to the 12th and my n to the 6th, right? And then when I walk through -2 to the 4th, if it helps you to write out the 4 -2's, right? So you see it better when you're multiplying. Negative times a negative is a positive. Negative times a negative is a positive. And 4 times 4 is 16. -1 3 times, right? A -1 times a -1 would be 1. Times that last -1 would be -1. So down here I'd have 16 times -1, which is -16. When I combine my m's, because it's a multiplication, I'm going to add those and I'd get m to the 11th. And then when I add my n's, I'd have n to the 18th. So just make sure you're walking through each step, right? This was a day 2 of the chapter. And then we started in on all of the division property stuff, right? Division property is the opposite of multiplication property. Make sure you subtract those exponents. I'm actually going to do this problem down here on the bottom as a reminder on this one. So a quick review, I can, if I want to, expand this problem out, right? When I expand this problem out, I put my time signs in between all of the parts, which would be like here and here and here and here and here, right? And then I know I have that power on the outside, so I have to multiply that power to all the powers. The 2 needs a power, so I need to put that power of 1 on it. Down here, the 7 needs a power and the 1 needs a power, right? And I got to get that power times through all of, it's a lot of powers down here and up there, right? So when I multiply those powers through, it would look like this. 2 to the power of 2, m to the negative 8, n to the negative 10, and p to the 18th. On the bottom, 7 to the 2, m to the 2, if I multiply that right, n to the negative 4, and p to the 6th, right? So then, I just need to make that n a little bit better, n. Then, right, I can go through my next steps as move the negative exponents. So I've got this m that I need to move, and then I have this n that I need to move, and I have this n that I need to move. The top ones are going to move down, this bottom one is going to move up, so it's going to look like this. That 2 squared stays and that 7 squared stays. My m to the 8th is going to come down, and I already have the m to the 2nd down there, so it's going to look like this down there. My n's are essentially flip-flopping places, so my power of 4 comes up, and my power of 10 goes down. My p's don't move anywhere because those have positive exponents, so my 18 and my 6. And then I can simplify my last parts, right? 2 to the 4th is, or 2 to the 2nd is 4. 7 to the 2nd is 49. My m's both down here is a multiplication, so I'm going to add those, and I'd have m to the 10th. For my n's, right, my n's are a division. Because it's a division, I'm going to subtract, and when I subtract, I put it where the bigger number is, so it's going to be 6 on the bottom. When I subtract my p's, 18 minus 6 is 12, so my p to the 12th goes up there on top. Done. I can't even simplify 4 and 49, right? And then there are going to be some scientific notation questions, right? But we just did scientific notation, so I'm not going to add them to this video. So you remember how to do these, right? And then use the calculator to make sure that those you're typing them in correctly. Remember, on your division property ones, you still need to make sure that when you do these division property ones, you put the parentheses on to make sure you're doing those correctly. When in doubt, right, check the answer keys when you're working through today's assignment, when you need to check them. Otherwise, that's all I've got for like reminders for the notes. Remember, you need to work through the review, and then all assignments are due when we take the test.